Hi and welcome to SCW, the wrestling channel here on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now, leave any comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. Once again, answering your questions in a Q&A format in the wrestling community. You can leave me a question for the next episode of Ask SCW here on YouTube. You can drop a comment in the comment section. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram. Just leave the hashtag AskSCW and I know to answer it in the next video. We've got lots to cover here today, including AEW, WWE, NXT and more. So without further ado, let's get straight into the questions. And the first one comes from Dylan Ketchum this week. Who do you think Jake the Snake Roberts' client is going to be? Great question to kick things off, and just the question I wanted this week. I had a big pop when Jake returned. I really just think it's clever the way that he's returned and the way he's been used, because I mean, Jake has had his demons and has gone through a lot. I've been quite fortunate actually this week. A friend of the show and has been involved actually contributing. George here on SCW actually shared with me the Resurrection of Jake Roberts documentary. If you haven't seen it, go and check it out. It is powerful, literally. It's such a great watch. I do highly recommend it. And you just sit there and think to yourself, like, for him to have the opportunity to come back in some format in the wrestling business, you know, I'm sure it motivates him, and it's going to be meaning a hell of a lot to the guy. And he's such a great talker, and he can offer a lot to who the client may or may not be. So for me, it's a big thing for Jake Roberts coming back, and like I said, the way he's been used. This is how you should use Legends to elevate your newer and younger talent. He's got a client, and like you say, who is that client going to be? Well, there's probably one of a few names it can be. Matt Hardy, but I think it's all but confirmed he's going to be the Exalted One from the Dark Order. We've got Lance Archer as a potential. We've got Luke Harper, of course, who's going to be Brody Lee, rumoured to be coming in any time now. And I suppose Brian Cage was someone that was rumoured a long time ago to be coming into AEW, and haven't seen him on Impact since, haven't seen him involved with AEW yet. So it would be interesting. I know there's also Jeff Cobb has been having some contract negotiations with AEW, so could he be now brought in as that? But I'm going to eliminate a few names quickly here of that. Like I say, Matt Hardy, don't see that happening. Brian Cage, for me, doesn't need a mouthpiece if he's going to come in. I think he can do it on his own. We mentioned Jeff Cobb there. He was the hired gun for the Inner Circle recently, so it would be a bit weird for him to then be brought in as the client a couple of weeks later for Jake Roberts. So I'm going to eliminate all those names and leave it down to Lance Archer or Brody Lee, or I'm going to say for the rest of this video, Luke Harper. For me, Lance Archer, the key part here was he was supposed to debut this week anyway on AEW, but sort of weirdly just wasn't mentioned, didn't show. Did Jake Roberts take that place and he is the client? Or is it going to be Luke Harper, someone that I'm not sure his strength on talking? I mean, this is the thing, Jake Roberts is such a great talker that it's not needed to have a great talker to be the client. So I think it's going to be one of those two. I'm currently I was leaning originally towards Luke Harper, but thinking to myself that Lance Archer was supposed to debut on that show this week, past week on Dynamite, makes me feel more it's Lance Archer. So I'm going to currently say Lance Archer is the guy, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Luke Harper. Next question comes from Get Cho Wrestling Podcast. With Tully, Arn, DDP, and now Jake the Snake being part of managing AEW wrestlers, who do you think should be the next legend that comes into the AEW scene? Fantastic question. Really like this question. And like I said in the last question, the use of all these people has been so clever. I mean, they're there to elevate the newer and younger talent. They're names that people, household names, recognize from whether you're an old-time wrestling fan, you recognize those classic names. A lot of them have the WCW links as well. I think Jay Roberts is probably the one that's more known for WWF or WWE if you prefer, but of course did have a stint in WCW in the early 90s as well. So I mean, for me, I want someone that's kind of got that history with TNT a little bit. So I mean, I think the best would be as well a great talker that could help, again, like a client, help elevate that sort of the younger guys and really put them over. I would love Ric Flair to be one to do that. I mean, he would be perfect for the role, but I just don't see that as something that would happen. I think he's going to stay with the WWE family for the foreseeable future. Although I do believe he was rumored to be the one that was going to show off the AEW Championship, which Bret Hart did. Bret Hart would be my choice then for the male superstars. I just don't see Ric Flair as a potential one, but I would prefer to see someone female really help, from a legend standpoint, help elevate that women's division, because I think that's something that's lacking at the moment. I think that's probably the weakest place in AEW right now. So for me, my first shout would be Gail Kim. I know she's had a lot to do with Impact Wrestling over the years. She's a legend in their world, perhaps not so much outside of it. Maybe not as... she was a household name for WWE, but perhaps isn't known for her WWE work as much. But she's one of the best in-ring performers there. Whether she'd come out of retirement, have a match or two, I don't know. But, I mean, Gail Kim would really put some legitimacy onto the women's division. And if people weren't so familiar with her work at home, it wouldn't take so long for it to show off, because she's very good at her promo work, her in-ring work. Gail Kim, it was the full package, and really, when you look back at it, it's criminal that she didn't have a chance to show that off more in her WWE days. So Gail Kim is going to be my official answer, because I think the women's division needs it most. Next question comes from Ty at World Order 2. Let's fantasy book Let's week. I'll tell you, let's do that indeed. If you could choose any Impact Wrestling star to be the exalted one in AEW, who would you choose? No, James Mitchell, that would be too obvious. Have to take the obvious one away from me, don't you? But no, if we're going to be serious, there's a few names that you could throw in that lineup. I mean, it depends as well. I mean, we mentioned there about how the women's division could do with a push. Why not have a woman leading the charge? I mean, someone like Sue Young would be quite interesting. Havoc, Rosemary would be interesting characters to use. But the one that most excites me, or would excite me for that role, would be Sami Callihan. Just purely because of the fact that he is someone that he's very dark anyway in his work with Impact Wrestling. His OVE gimmick has been... it's gone beyond expectations for me when I first see him come in. And he's just an evil guy. He's a heel for life. I mean, there's no way around it. He would be absolutely perfect for the role. But I do believe that he will be staying with Impact Wrestling for the foreseeable future. And I do believe, just to give a little bit of Impact Wrestling chat, I think he is potentially the person that is in charge of the ICU storyline that's going on right now. If you haven't checked that out, by the way, it's basically what they're doing in WWE with the circle that keeps coming up. But Impact, in my opinion, is doing it much better. Of course, in WWE, we believe that's Ali's return. But I think that what's being done here is almost taking over the show, taking over the program. And you just see a lot more thought and a lot more creativity put into what that ICU angle is. So I think Sammy's behind it. I think he is going to have a new stable. It would be interesting to see what that leads to with OVE and what direction they would go going forward. But I'm interested to see what it could be. But I have a funny feeling Sammy could be involved with that. We'll have to wait and see. WrestleGram is our next question here. With Cody saying before that AEW won't count on wrestling writers, and what we have been witnessed from AEW is slow building storylines, amazing promos, great character development, and fan engagement. Do you see in this day and age that wrestling doesn't need writers anymore? Well, I think that there's always going to be some creative direction. There has to be some direction given backstage from someone somewhere, whether it's the Bucks and Cody sitting down together and going, this is the direction we're going to lead to. There has to be some element of writing. But it just goes to show that the wrestlers themselves have great ideas, great vision. And I think that... if you look from a WWE standpoint, scripted promos has been something that's been heavily featured. You could argue it stifles some of the character development of a wrestler, and perhaps also takes away from what they could be just giving in general. Maybe there's so much more ideas that a wrestler might have that they could share to the table. So, I mean, when you look at it from that standpoint, I mean, I think WWE could perhaps learn maybe a thing or two, because I think it always would make sense to see what your wrestlers think about creative ideas, what they're comfortable with, what they're uncomfortable with, and play everyone to their strengths. That's what I've always felt was quite good. And that's what I always loved about Paul Heyman in the ECW days. He always seemed to find what someone's strength was, and he just focused on the strength. He didn't want you to see a weakness in any wrestler, any, angle, any building. If it was a small building with 200 people, we made sure we emphasised that it was noisy, it was loud, passionate, hardcore fan base, that sort of stuff back then. And it feels that AEW has kind of taken that sort of idea and sort of, well, we're going to have arenas that are going to have like 2, 3, 4, 5,000 people, and we're going to play to that strength. There's a gap in the market to get how wrestling fans were at one stage, and we're going to push to find that. And yeah, when you look at that from a writing and creative standpoint, a team of writers like WWE have like a team of 24, team of 50 needed. I'd say that's outdated. I think a job can be done by a couple of people, but I would ensure that even if there isn't so much of a writing element in AEW, there certainly is a creative direction. So whether it's one person, two people, a handful of people, I think that is good. You don't want too many. I think that a good saying is sometimes there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and if you're trying to put that perfect recipe together, you don't need too many people. So for me, I think a handful is at best. So for me, if I was involved with any company when it comes to a writing standpoint, I always think that it's better having 3 or 4 people at the most. Next question comes from Mike, who asks us, which is the best way to conclude the Johnny Gargano versus Tommaso Ciampa feud once and for all? Well, it does need finishing. If they're going to do it one more time, and I mean, there are some differences to what we've had previously. I mean, Ciampa is the face, Gargano is the heel. It was supposed to be at last year's WrestleMania weekend, with the Ciampa injury, that got taken away. So they've made sure they do it this year. For me, if we're going to do it one more time, it has to be proven it's the last time. Now, whether there's a special gimmick match involved or not, it is irrelevant for me. I think what needs to happen is we need to have a loser leaves NXT match. I think that is the perfect way to do it, because then that way the other guy goes on Raw or SmackDown. I know from previous interviews, both have said that they do not want to leave NXT. But let's take, for example, I think I've spoke about this previously in one of my episodes here, but say Candice LeRae, she, arguably has never been put in a high-profile women's division angle in NXT. Maybe they could see a gap for her on Raw or SmackDown, and you're going to always want to freshen that women's division up every year with at least 1 or 2 new women in the fold. So, maybe she could go to Raw or SmackDown. Right now I'd say SmackDown would be the best place for her. And, that would be a great way to say, right, let's write Johnny Gargano off of NXT, lose that loser leaves NXT match. He can go to SmackDown, and maybe if he were Daniel Bryan, now I'm dreaming, and fantasy booking away, and Ciampa can continue as normal. And I think that would be the best way to do it, because otherwise, we do always have this thing where sometimes we really love a feud and we shout fight forever, but a feud shouldn't go on forever. I'm not saying that these two can't ever wrestle again. All the greatest rivalries always return and have matches. Austin and The Rock, they always had a couple of years gap, but then they would return to that and do it again. And you look and say, well, maybe in a couple of years, but this has to be the last time for a long time. We can't keep having the same thing recycled and put over to us. So for me, loser leaves NXT is the best way to go for me. Next question comes from Samuel Decius. Do you think it was the right choice to remove the title from The Fiend? Short answer, no. And I'll give you the long answer now, because I think that you guys deserve that when we take the time out to ask a question here for Ask SCW. I don't think The Fiend should have been champion to begin with. I don't think he should put in a title match to begin with. But as he was, and he was put in that environment and put as the champion, he needed to be champion till at least WrestleMania, in my opinion. Losing to Goldberg was damaging for the Fiend character, mainly because you look and see what happened in that Hell in a Cell match with Seth Rollins, and he no-sold so much to the point that it was borderline ridiculous. On that night, the way that Seth was, really, it should have killed the Fiend right there. For him then to be so superior and then sort of dominate, and then you get to a point where he goes in the ring with Goldberg and loses after 4 spears and 1 sort of suplex, half jackhammer. Okay, it's a jackhammer, but it wasn't done to perfection. Let's not be too mean on Goldberg, though. He is in his 50s. It's a creative direction from WWE. Most people, probably even Goldberg himself, would have said that's probably not the right creative direction to go to. But, you know, they bring the guy back and they said, you're going to be Universal Champion. There you go. He's going to go with it and roll with it. But you look at it and you say to yourself, right, okay, you know, what should have happened with The Fiend? I think he should have gone into WrestleMania in a match with John Cena. I think Roman Reigns was always the wrong way to go. But John Cena could have chased that 17th world title. I don't see the point of Cena ever coming back to wrestle again if he's not going to try and beat Ric Flair's record. So for me, The Fiend should have kept the belt solely for this purpose. Now, should Cena have won at WrestleMania or should he win at WrestleMania? Hell no. Fiend should win, and Fiend now needs to win to keep some of that momentum he's got. Otherwise, he's gonna fall down that pecking order pretty quickly, I can promise you. But looking at it, I don't think it was right for him to lose the belt. Certainly now the timing was wrong. I do think that it was done, though, purely to protect Roman Reigns. And I don't feel I've seen that many places being said. I just believe that if Roman had done what Goldberg has done, you see how much hate went on Twitter, the meltdown, and much hate has probably gone Goldberg's way. That had gone Roman Reigns' way had Roman been the guy to do it. So now they've got the match of Roman and Goldberg. Arguably, people would cheer now when Roman beats Goldberg. So I think that you can look around it and say, is it clever from WWE? Maybe. But I'm still not convinced it was the right move to do. Next question comes from Austin Whitley. Would you be against Edge winning a world title again? I mean, Goldberg did it, and he's in his 50s. Well, funnily, we just mentioned Goldberg in the last question. We bring him up again in this question. Yeah, Goldberg did it in his 50s, and yeah, I'm say Edge, why not? I mean, look, if Goldberg can win at his 50s, Edge is, he's in his 40s, he's 46, I believe. But, yeah, I mean, Edge is in fantastic shape and was out of the ring for nearly a decade. He's come back. He's a big name. He was a big name when he left. He didn't get to finish on his own terms. I'm not against it. I don't think fans would be against it. And maybe that's hypocritical of a lot of people. I mean, I mentioned this last week. People weren't so hypocritical, and having a go at Chris Jericho being the first AEW champion. I'm sure he's flirting around the 50 mark as well. So, I mean, where's the problem? I don't, in one way, we shouldn't be arguing that the Goldberg is the champion because someone like Jericho did it. Edge could be, and I wouldn't have a problem with it. Now, is it because Goldberg has been so much of a part-timer in the last 20 years, or 15 years, we can say at least, because he stopped in 2004. He's come back, he's had probably 5 or 6 matches since 2016. Okay, Edge has been in the Rumble match, he's going to have a match at WrestleMania. How much is Edge going to wrestle after that? I think that would determine a lot of people's thoughts on whether it would be a good move or bad move. If Edge is going to wrestle, say, 10 times this year, then I don't think people are against it at all. And to be honest, people were so happy he come back, were so unhappy with the way he left. There wasn't so much sorrow for when Goldberg left in 2004. I mean, that famous match with Brock Lesnar, that match was booed out of the building because both guys were leaving. I think people just have a different attitude with towards it. Edge has always been a WWE guy. Sorry, Goldberg, but he was also a WCW guy. I don't know. It just, people have different attitudes when it comes to it. But asking my opinion on it, I mean, I'm not really against Goldberg becoming the champion. I see the method and why WWE's done it. I could say that with the idea perhaps with Roman Reigns and also perhaps for TV money as well, if they're going to sell rights to pay-per-views. Goldberg, arguably at this stage, is still a bigger name than The Fiend. That just shows how they've not built so many people up as well as they could have done. So, yeah, that's kind of my feeling with that. So, I mean, I'm not really against it. I just think The Fiend was the wrong guy to lose to Goldberg. I think it would have been a lot better had Goldberg come and beat Brock one more time, really, if I'm being brutally honest with it, because I don't think it would have harmed Brock so much. Even if maybe Seth was the champion, I just don't think that would have harmed so much, where The Fiend, it was a whole aura of a guy that, new character, was not selling anything, was unbeaten, was unstoppable, but yet could be stopped in a couple of minutes by a part-timer who was in his 50s. I think that's the main issue with the Goldberg title run. So, but apart from that, I don't have a problem with it with Goldberg, and I certainly don't have a problem with it with Edge. I think that Edge and Randy Orton are building into one of the best storylines in, I can't even tell you how long. I absolutely enthralled and love the storyline. So, yeah, I'm not against it, and I think that Edge will, or potentially could be, if his body holds up. I could see him being a world champion before it's all said and done for him. Last question this week comes from Gina Prensner. What are your thoughts of all these legends that have their Hall of Fame rings now going to AEW? Great question to finish us off this week. Personally, I'm not really against the Hall of Famers. I know that they probably had a relationship in WWE, and you look at it and say to yourself, right, okay, they're in the Hall of Fame, and they had that. But if they're not being used by WWE now in some capacity, whether it's a producer, whether it's an on-screen role, and they want to remain in the business and they've got that opportunity, I don't see why why they can't do it. I have no problem with it. I would say though that if they are, I mean, I've not been checking people's hands when they go out, but if they are wearing their Hall of Fame rings, that maybe they shouldn't be doing that as they're on a completely different product. I understand that I mean, Bully Ray did it for Ring of Honor, and he did that to gain heat, and there was a clear reasoning. It was almost brought up on commentary in the ring. So for me, that sort of made sense. But if you're just coming out there, you've got your Hall of Fame ring on, no mention made of it, you're a face, for me, then it sort of becomes a bit like, why are you wearing that? You could take the ring off for while you go out to the ring. Then when you go back, I mean, it's a prestigious thing. It means a lot to these legends. I mean, we talked about Jake Roberts earlier in the video, how much it means to him to, have got back into the business where it felt at one point it was a point of no return. He got to, come back on an old school Raw. He then got to be in the Hall of Fame, and now he's got this opportunity to be a part of something in AEW where he's a manager and he's building up the future. And I'm sure for him, the idea that he feels that he can have a legacy now going through a younger guy that got that push and that rub off of him, I think is going to mean so much. But yeah, when you look at it with that from the Hall of Fame rings, like I said, I haven't really been paying much note on that side of it. But yeah, I would say they shouldn't wear the rings to the ring. But as a performer that has an opportunity to perform outside of WWE, if they're not employed by WWE, then why not? That's all from me anyway this week here on Ask SCW. Thank you so much for everyone that has been involved putting your questions in. If you like this video, you're first time asker or anything like that, first time viewer, please hit the subscribe button, hit a like, hit a share, and yeah, always make sure that you can get involved on future videos as well. Leave the hashtag AskSCW, and yeah, I know to answer it in the next video when we come up to doing one of these, which I try to do weekly here on YouTube. You can check out Elimination Chamber predictions if you haven't already. I do recommend you go and do that now. And like I say, go and follow everybody as well on Twitter. All the questions today from Twitter. So go and follow everybody. Let's grow together as a wrestling community, and let's share the love. We're one community, one big happy family. So yeah, let's share it and let's all grow together. But that's all from me anyway. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time here on YouTube.com. You've been watching SCW, the wrestling channel. Take care.